All right, thanks, Nikki. Okay, so we're on project selection criteria number 7 now, which is on page 23 of the guide, and it's the environmental design criteria. This criteria covers environmental design techniques to ensure the project will be sustainable for years to come. This criterion has either two combined parts. So you'll be answering A and B, or one standalone part is criteria C. And I'll get into criteria C in a little bit, but that's really for folks who are interested in going after a sites or lead certification. So if that's you, you're going to answer C by itself. Otherwise, you're going to follow criteria A and B. So let me start off with criteria A. Just want to point out here on this page, you're going to answer all questions under criteria 7A, which includes the 4 techniques here: stormwater, water efficiency, recycled materials, and landscaping. I do want to point out under landscaping, because this is a common theme that we actually saw in some previous programs, that folks were overlooking the 2 parts under landscaping. So I do want to point that out, that you need to describe landscaping that excludes the use of or removes invasive plants and instead features drought-tolerant type plantings. And then the second part is to discuss how landscaping minimizes the use of toxic pesticides and inorganic fertilizers. Then you'll also see down below and in the underlined area, it says, or describe how the project will not require additional landscaping. So if that's the case, that's okay to make that your answer, and you can still score maximum points if your project does not require additional landscaping. And you'll also notice the same for water efficiency. There's also that underlined part of the sentence that says, or the project will not require additional use of water. So if you respond to all 4 and incorporate all 4 of those listed techniques, you will obtain the maximum of 4 points for section A. And then you're going to go to part 7B, which is on the next page. And applicants will want to incorporate at least 3 additional sustainable techniques that were not discussed in criteria A. Please do not duplicate your answers from A into B. That's also another common thing that we ended up seeing. So just want to call that out to your attention now. And you might be thinking, well, what other techniques could I incorporate? So we're going to go now back to the technical assistance and give you some ideas. And that's on page 59 of the guide. So we're going to go over some additional ideas of what additional conservation and ecological techniques you can incorporate into your project that can assist you with answering to this criteria 7B. And as you can see here, Sam, scrolling through here, there's numerous examples on this page. It can include things such as rapidly renewable building materials, or repairing or restoring damaged wetlands, or something that would reduce the urban health island effect. So those are all some examples. There's many more here listed, and you can get creative as well. It doesn't have to be one listed here, but just make sure, the point I want to make is to make sure that you're not repeating anything that you talked about in criteria 7A when you're responding to criteria 7B, to make sure that you can maximize your points here and get another 3 points for a total of 7 points for criteria number 7. Okay, so let's turn back to page 25 and we'll go over criteria 7C. Okay, so for those of you who are planning to obtain LEED or CITES certifications for your project, you're going to be answering the 3 questions shown here on the page. Basically, what level of certification are you planning to obtain? What's the current status and next steps for you to obtain that certificate? And then also number 3 is just to make sure that you talk about how your project will incorporate pervious surfaces or other techniques such as bioswale. So that is in the legislation. So we called it out here for you. And as I mentioned, if you are obtaining one of those certifications, you just answer this criterion here, 7C, and you can obtain the 7 points, which is the maximum allowed for criteria 7. Okay, Victor, I think I see one question that popped up in the chat for this criterion, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. So there is a question from Carrie, and it is a native plant garden additional landscaping? And I would need more clarity about what that question is going to. A native plant garden would typically be considered a recreation feature. If it's something that the public would go to see and experience for their recreational use. So yeah, please provide a little more clarification about what you're trying to understand about the native plant garden. But it can definitely, a native plant garden can definitely score points in the environmental design criterion. If you look at the technical assistance section that Natalie covered, which is on, I think, page 59, there is an example of creating a sense of place based on, there it is, number 1. Thank you very much, Sam. So on your screen, on page 59, item 1 says create iconic placemaking with native vegetation landscapes and locally crafted recreation features. Placemaking is an interactive park design technique which celebrates the area's cultural or natural history, and landscaping involves native drought-resistant trees, shrubs, flowers, etc., native to the region. So you can definitely score points under criteria number 7B through a native vegetation landscape, if that helps. And if that doesn't help, Carrie, please clarify the question. Thanks. And then for Jackie, the question for the same criterion is to clarify removing non-natives and planting drought tolerant is different from a pollinator garden. What if it is the same site? So it is eligible. It is eligible under landscaping to remove non-native plants and replace it with drought tolerant native vegetation. So that is eligible. But please send, you can work with your project officer. I don't want to split the hairs too much without knowing enough about if it qualifies as a pollinator garden or what have you. So a lot of these like very specific project questions can definitely be answered after the workshops by contacting your competitive review project officer to get into really detailed project situations, so they can help you over the next 8 months with very detailed project situations. They're a really friendly, helpful team. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Victor.